When I'm always here talking about this and letting it fall to the ground. Today we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy XIII-2. As anyone who's been watching my channel recently know, I have started dabbling into streaming on Twitch TV, and I made this our guinea pig. And in doing so, I have finished the game. And of course, it's time for everyone's dreadedness overview. So, physical product show off real quick again. It's a limited edition, comes in a little sleeve thing, and then it has a little book thing, game manual, you get a little artwork, and then in the final area, you get the 4-disc soundtrack. So anyway, so on to, of course, the more coup de grace. What did I think about the game? My first impressions of the game, as anyone who watched that knows, that I had a good positive things to say about the gameplay, but some negative things to say about the story. But now that it's finished, does that stay on a foundation, or does it start to crumble? I'd hate to say it, but it starts to crumble. The game starts suffering some gameplay issues. Basically, it seems like the problem is that the people who made the game don't really have a good grasp on balance. Because basically you're going to start hopping around into a lot of places, backtracking and stuff. And there's a lot of areas I didn't get to go to, because there's alternate time periods and different years and that. But there was still backtracking and stuff. And that leads to a lot of disbalancement between your party and enemies a lot of times. And it just really feels like you're basically becoming way too strong, way too fast. I did not do a lot of grinding in this game until like near the end of the game to make my monster characters efficient enough for the final battle. But I mean, like, I basically got to what I would probably say was like the maybe 30-40% mark of the game, and then like a huge chunk of the game became incredibly like mediocre. Like you could just go with a party of commandos and just and not have to worry about staggering and shit. And well, that kind of destroys the whole concept of the battle system for 13, you know? So it kind of makes me feel like the team that developed the game couldn't really keep a balancement in the open world environment, and the linearity was something they actually had to do. And that's actually kind of sad, because the open world thing is a positive in my opinion. It's kind of positive to have this freedom of choice and going, like, you can ultimately play the game in a really different way for me, going to different timelines that I didn't even get to go to or unlock. And go to those timelines to further progress your own storyline. So it's really a shame in that category, though. Music, there's a few more songs in the game I liked. The monster component, as I mentioned, it has a monster companion, and you basically can have 3 of them loaded in the slots, and all monsters are one specific job class. So it's basically recommended to have one be a completely different job class each, unless you have something very unique in mind. But really, the monster system isn't like, you could obviously get really high-tech depth in it, but I wouldn't say you have to worry about too much. Because basically, as you develop your monsters and stuff, you can it's never really a waste of time to develop your monsters, because they can be devoured by other monsters, and special traits in that can carry on. So basically, all the time you consume into it is valuable and useful. But it never really seems like it's necessary to have to, like, oh, I need to get this monster or that. Like, you just need to get a decent, I'd say a rank 4 monster at least by the end of the game, and you should be able to finish the game pretty simple. You don't have to go get some way mega monster and do millions of levels and stuff. But you can't just gimp it with really weak ones that you've got at the beginning of the game or anything. So there was I'd say the ranking system in your battles is more useful in 13-2 versus the original 13. It seems to greatly affect your loot system a lot more, even though that was its original purpose in 13 also, but loot never seemed very meaningful in 13. It's a little more useful because you need certain items to be able to craft certain material, certain items and such. So it is necessary to go get some loot and that, and it also affects the crystal drops for your monsters. So you have that effect too. Man, it's really hard to. It's really kind of hard to talk about in a way, you know. It's like there's a lot of how to put it. There's a lot of familiarity with a lot of the monsters. It does reuse a lot of monster models from the original 13 while throwing a small dash of a few new ones. So there are some reused assets there. A lot of the environments are basically all new though, so it just really reuses a lot of monsters with a few added ones here and there, mainly being big bosses and such. The story I can't... The story is really something that's probably my most hated thing about the game, so... To basically put it, a lot of people complained in the original 13 that the story was really alienating and didn't tell you jack shit. To be honest, I have to disagree with that. I mean, there are plots that are designed where you're in this kind of I don't know what's going on for a portion of it before it starts explaining with it. And that's kind of the path that 13 was doing. Once you get to the whole part with Saz and Vanille, it starts explaining and stuff starts connecting the dots without having to read all the data entries for more detailed information. That's just for more detailed information. If you thought that was confusing, then you're fucking going to be flipped upside down in 13-2, because I felt so fucking alienated in 13-2. Like, the story just so... And it ends on such a stupid note. It's, like... It feels so alienating, because it's like... What's a good example? Like, let's take Kingdom Hearts and turn it into, like, Diablo. Like, you know, it's such a weird shift in what the hell was going on. Like, when did time travel and shit ever become relevant at all in 13? Like, you know, the whole, like, thing with 13 was, like, trying to alter a fate that you, in theory, had no control over and such. In a depressive, horrible thing. And it's like, I don't know, it just feels so weird. Like, this goddess and this girl who exists throughout all time to watch her future and die over and over again. It's like, all so weird. It's so strange to me. And the ending is a cliffhanger, and it's so stupid in my opinion. It's so fucking stupid in my opinion. It's basically the apocalypse, and I'm assuming Lightning's Return is going to be about fixing that. It's really a shame that I thought Final Fantasy XIII was a pretty averagely decent game. Not perfect, but not as awful as some people made it. It's definitely a different game, and in my opinion, it's not as hard as many older games. But XIII-2 just seems like it's so much easier in a very bad way. Like, in a very bad way. And I'm sure there was, like, super bosses and whale monsters and shit. That's actually something that's kind of a positive, actually. There's a lot of side quest stuff. There's a lot to do. If you're a completionist type person, there's a lot of stuff to do in XIII-2. So, I mean, I didn't even scratch the surface. I went from basically the majority of the story. So, there's a lot of side crap to do. So, if that's your kind of thing, you might want to look into XIII-2. Because I'm sure there's probably are some mega bosses and stuff. But the story itself really feels unbalanced to me in that. So I have to say, it wasn't as fun or interesting as the original XIII. It just really felt like the group didn't have a grasp on doing an open world game. And it really actually makes me wonder about looking into some of the people who worked on XIII and what kind of other stuff they did. Because I'm kind of curious if a lot of them were inexperienced people or not. Or maybe they didn't have experience with the role-playing games in Square Enix's department. So I'm a little curious about that. Because it just really feels like they just didn't really care about balancing it very much. I don't know, it just seemed really odd. And I'm sorry for that not being a very coherent thing, but I didn't want to turn into a huge rant. Of all, I wouldn't really recommend getting XIII-2 unless you were getting it pretty cheap or something. I didn't enjoy it as much. I actually saw like the limited edition for the 360 version at GameStop for like $29. So you can probably find the limited editions pretty easy, probably online still. But yeah, I'd say $20, $30 probably the most I would pay for it. I'd probably go with 20 to be honest. That 20 below, I don't think it's worth a whole lot, but of course at this point in time, it's pretty hard to find some idiot trying to sell it for $60 still, to be honest, at this point in time. But I'd say if you really liked the XIII, it's still worth a try, but in the end, it didn't really make me think much better of it. Hopefully Lightning's Return might give the series one more try and redeeming itself. I thought XIII was alright. XIII-2 went down, even though it did a few things to improve some of my complaints in XIII. It'll be interesting to see what Lightning Returns turns out. So until next time, good day.